Hey, what's going on, folks? Welcome back to the Graphic Design is Fun podcast. My name's Dan. Today, I got something a little special for you guys. Okay, today is a two-part episode. It's a crossover episode, you could call it. You know, like when Family Guy, like when Homer Simpson is on, goes on the, you know what I mean? Like when the Simpsons go into the little town with all the people from Family Guy, and you're like, wait, what? But it's like it's a crossover episode. It's with your two favorite graphic design podcasts. Graphic Design is Fun, of course, and Talk Paper Scissors, hosted by the wonderful Diana Varma. So what you're about to listen to is me sort of interviewing Diana about her career as a teacher, teaching graphic design. And we talk about a few other things. And then after you're done listening to this one, I invite you to go check out her podcast, Talk Paper Scissors, and listen to her interview me about learning graphic design. So the theme of this sort of crossover is teaching and learning graphic design. Yeah. And anyway, it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. Diana is awesome. I love her podcast. If you like this one and you're looking for more sort of graphic design content, check it out because it's seriously good. She has over 100 episodes. Very, kind of getting into the nitty-gritty graphic design goodness. But yeah, so this conversation here that you're about to listen to, Diana is a teacher. She's an award-winning lecturer at a couple colleges here in Toronto, and she's also a podcaster, of course. So we talked a lot about her experiences as a teacher, how she views her role as an instructor, and how that's actually changed over the years of her teaching. We talk about how she got started as a teacher, and also this like seemingly random side quest of starting a first aid and CPR certification company, which seems very random and is very random, but she explains how that actually had a really big impact on her career going forward. It sort of laid the foundation for her as a teacher. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. Diana is super, super passionate about what she does, and it was a ton of fun to chat with her. Again, after you listen to this episode, go check out her podcast, Talk Paper Scissors, and you can listen to me and my thoughts on learning graphic design, both for students who are in school and also people who are teaching themselves through online resources like YouTube and Skillshare and that kind of thing. If that interests you, go check it out. If not, there's definitely other episodes on there that she has that will interest you. But before you do any of that, you can sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with Diana Varma. When I was thinking about starting this podcast, which I've had as an idea for a long time, but when I finally was like, okay, I'll do it, I was just trying to find every kind of graphic design podcast out there, and I found yours, and I was like, damn, this is sick. This is like ultimate graphic design nerdery. Like, we're really going into it, and it was just, it was cool to see what you do, what you have going on with your podcast. It's cool.
That's very kind. And can you tell my husband that when he gets home? Can you just let him know that it's actually like a cool thing?
Sure. Well, he doesn't like your podcast.
I think he's sick of hearing me talk about typography. It's like, I don't care. This is not my jam. Anyway, moving on.
But
I am happily married.
So why did you how did that start? Like, why and how did you start your podcast?
Yeah, I too had been thinking about starting a podcast for a long time, and I actually used to work as the school that I still am a part of, their internship coordinator. And so I had this is probably back in 2013, 2014. I had this idea to create a podcast all about just resources for students who are looking to find internships, who are currently in internships. What do you do after the internship? All of the bits and pieces that I was teaching in workshops and seminars and one-on-one with students, I wanted to kind of put out there to the larger community through a podcast. I think I was even going to call it the Avid Intern or some. I don't know what I was going to call it. Doesn't matter. That never happened. I had 2 children, and that that kind of took some time. So that never happened, and I moved out of the role of internship coordinator. But I still had this inkling to create a podcast, and so finally, I had all of this kind of pent up creative energy that I needed to do something with. And in late 2019, when I was still on mat leave with my second daughter, I just thought now is the perfect time. I have no other professional commitments. Yes, I have a commitment to this 8-month-old thing here, but she naps. So let's do things while she naps.
Right.
And the podcast was born.
That's so cool. And super nice of you to want to invite me on. So did you listen to, I'm just curious, so you listened to one of my episodes or the Aaron Draplin one?
Yeah, so I've listened here and there, like
Mhm.
again in the in the car running between
Yeah.
kid things, but
Mhm.
yeah, what you're doing is really awesome, and I love the graphic design is cool. Period. That makes me happy. The name of your podcast.
Oh yeah. I like it. Gotta have the period in there. Although then it's tough because then when I write it out and I want to say the graphic design is fun podcast, I'm like,
Oh, sorry, graphic design is fun. Oh my gosh, I even got the name
fun. Yeah, no, that's
wrong.
fine.
Ay.
But then you're like, am I going to include the period if I'm putting the word podcast after? Which kind of goes back to the like what I was saying on your podcast about like caring about every last detail. Sometimes I find that that's almost like a negative thing where I'm too focused on the details and I'm like, okay, all that matters with this podcast is that I like talk to interesting people and have a half decent microphone. Like this is maybe controversial, but like, do you ever find that sometimes graphic designers or maybe other people in similar fields have like an over tendency to like really focus on all these little details and kind of miss the big picture?
Ding, ding, ding. Yes.
Really?
Yes. I think so. I mean, I'm certainly guilty of that at times too, but I think that zooming in, I am constantly questioning why. Like I'm trying to take an actual physical step back in my thinking and go, wait, why do we do something this way, or why am I doing it that way, and trying to broaden my horizons, as it were. And I think any sort of design work, or I'll say anything that's being created in the world, requires 2 things, which are microscopes and telescopes. You need the microscopes to zoom into the details, but just as equally you need the telescope to see the big picture, to kind of understand why you're doing something, to not get bogged down in the minutia.
Yeah, totally. That's so true. And I think something that I've gotten slightly better at, but was definitely not good at just a few years ago. And I think from kind of seeing it over and over again, and also seeing other people do it, and you can kind of see like, oh, that's not going to work. Like you got too many microscopes. You need a telescope, and you can kind of just almost see it coming. But I think with this podcast, and it applies to anything, trying to be like, okay, like what actually matters? Oh, well, what matters is what seems to matter in terms of like successful ones is like that they have 100 episodes or something like that. So it's like those are the kind of goals that I'm like trying to focus on more. And then all the little details, which just I can't help myself. But then you look at successful podcasts and you're like, oh, they didn't even think twice about this. They don't even care. Maybe this doesn't matter quite so much. I'm still going to do it because, I just have to, but you can definitely get bogged down in the minutia, as you said.
Yeah. There's lots to it, but I think, truthfully, going back to kind of what constitutes success in podcasting or in design, even, honest to goodness, I love doing this work of podcasting. Like I'm not getting paid for this. It's not sponsored. It's more work and actual money that I'm putting out to do this.
Yeah.
But for me, like I love it that much that I know, okay, that for me is success.
Right.
Like if I go to sleep thinking about something to do with the podcast, and I wake up thinking about that continuing the thought about the podcast, like I know that I'm doing it for the right reasons, and for me that in and of itself is success. If I didn't have to post conversations, I don't know even know that I would. Like, I feel like I bring guests on to have these discussions, and it's awesome. And it's only fair that I share that discussion with
Yeah.
others and for their sake and the sake of anyone who wants to listen. But truthfully, I would do this even if it wasn't published anywhere. That's how much I love it.
You totally that I know exactly. I've had that exact same thought of like the only like real reason I'm well no it's a bit of a lie because I want hopefully people to be listening and getting something out of it at some point, but there's a big part of it that's like I just want to be chatting with these people, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
no one's going to agree to just have a 40-minute Zoom call with me. So
Right?
I kind of have no choice but to upload it and then call it a podcast, and then that way people will agree to it. But
That's exactly how I feel.
mhm.
These are discussions that ultimately I want to share, but it's under the guise of a podcast. Will you come and chat on a podcast? And I feel like it's right in that sweet spot of people understanding what a podcast is and what can happen and the magic that can be created through conversation on a podcast.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's still something about, oh, you have a podcast. There's some still like novelty there, that it's right in the sweet spot where people still want to talk to you who are out of your league.
Right.
but it's, yeah, anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that other than it's a fun space to explore.
hmm But I mean, no, there's definitely something about saying like it's a podcast that somebody who really has no business talking to me is
Right?
still like, oh, I'll do it. I mean, I guess it's a podcast, because this is a podcast, and also Design Matters with Debbie Millman is a podcast.
Right.
So we're equal, me and Debbie, So like, it's not fair, but that's just they're both called podcasts. So I don't know. There's something there.
But here's the thing. Here's the cool thing. So Debbie Millman, brilliant, love what she does. She understands her slice of the pie.
Right.
She is not you or me though, and our experiences and our education and our community and connection, all these things that make us us, that we can share our slice of the pie. So the only way I can think about it and rationalize it in my brain is that for me to sit alongside people who are so uber hyper successful, and for me to sit right beside them, I always come back to the thinking that like I am bringing value in my own way. Right? So it's not that one is better than the other. Yes, hers is more established. She has more experience in many facets, but ultimately she is not me or you and she's not able to share the stories in the same way, much like we are not her and we can't share those stories in the same way. That's the way I rationalize it in my brain, and I think for me it's a healthy way that allows me to continue doing this and feeling confident in what I'm doing.
No, that you're so right, and that's the yeah, it's kind of I have to tell myself somehow that I'm not a complete fraud. And I think just saying like, oh, well, I have certain unique like experiences and point of views and whatever. So it's like, even though maybe there's already some people doing similar things and like you said, it's like, yeah, but they're not you. And so there's value there. Yeah, I totally agree. I want to talk to you about your teaching career and like how you got into teaching. You teach at like a few different colleges here in Toronto. How did that get started? Because that sounds really fun.
Yeah, I live and breathe teaching. Teaching is my jam. If I wasn't paid, I would still teach, which sounds ridiculous. I wouldn't do the marking. The marking is the worst part. But I mean, anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But no, I love teaching and being in that space with others, and it's my jam. So I had the great opportunity as a student to work as a teaching assistant, and my supervisor at the time gave me lots and lots of freedom and leeway and the ability to kind of use my hours to support students as I see fit. So I ran a lot of tutorials, and I did a lot of cool stuff one-on-one with students to help support the course. So that's kind of where it started in the university setting. And then just after I graduated, I worked in industry in the book printing world for a couple of years. But again, I had a colleague or a contact say, hey, I need someone to fill in last minute to teach this course in night school. Want to do it? and I was fresh out of university. I was like, whatever, 23 years old. Like, can I do this? Is this a thing? Okay, so this person seems to feel that I can do it. Let's try it. So I got to teach my very first night course, like right out of university.
And what
And
what
then
uh, what course was that?
yeah, so it was the same subject matter and the same program that I had just graduated from. And it was like the very first intro level overview of the industry course. So, like, I understood the subject
Right.
matter. It's not like I was teaching astrophysics or something that was way out of my league. But yeah, so that's kind of where it started. And then I was always, even in my day job, I was always teaching. Like, I was always the one to do the plant tours and show clients how this works and how that works. And like, that's something I always just loved to do. And eventually, what that evolved into is running away from that full-time job and starting a small business in something that had nothing to do with the design world, with printing, with anything I was used to. And so I I started a first aid training business.
Okay, yeah, I saw this on your
Random.
LinkedIn and I was like, I don't understand. Is this actually a first aid training business that you
It
just started? How, yeah, what's the origin story there?
100% that's what it was. So I many moons ago was a lifeguard and a swim teacher and all of
Me
those things
too.
you do. Yes, you do as a teenager. And I had an opportunity to kind of recertify all of. I was part of the health and safety committee at the company I worked for, and they were like, "We need to recertify." I was like, "Oh, I'm pretty sure I'm like one course away from being able to do this internally." They
Right.
were like, "Cool, do that." And then I ran away from the company with the certification in hand. It was like, I need a change. Let's start my own thing. And so for about $3,000, I bought all the equipment I needed. I started networking, pounding the pavement. It was like the most exhilarating moment in my career to date because I could design all of the material and I could think through the pedagogy and how I wanted to teach this material and do it differently than the way I had been taught. So it was kind of this magical moment that seems disconnected from everything I do today, but honestly it laid the foundation. Like over the course of probably 3 to 4 years, I taught 2,600 people
Wow.
from all walks of life, like from literal grade 3 classrooms through to groups of new parents, through to uh, concrete mix truck drivers, through to there was every kind of person that I was teaching. And because I was teaching the same thing over and over and over again, like I literally at one point was, I still can teach it in my sleep. I sometimes dream about teaching first aid and CPR. And I wake up, I'm like, man, that was a great class. Way to go. But it was something that was just so instrumental to, and such a foundational few years in my teaching career because it was so not formal teaching in a university setting, which is what I do now. But it allowed me to perfect my craft in that moment. I mean, nothing's ever perfect, but I felt so strong teaching that material. It was the best. So that's where it all kind of started for me. And then an opportunity came up in the university to work as an internship coordinator. I snagged that while still doing my side hustle of teaching first aid and CPR. And then that internship job turned into a couple of courses here and there that I was able to teach, and that at the university. That then led me to do my master's. That then led to more teaching, and kind of that spiral continued. And now I have the really great pleasure of teaching in two different programs within TMU, Toronto Metropolitan University. So the School of Graphic Communications Management, which is my alma mater, and then also the Master of Digital Media program, which is a really cool group of people who come from all over the place. I've literally taught rocket scientists and actors and UX UI designers and all of these people. And the course I teach is about bringing them together to innovate. And how do we take all of these different skill sets and use them to our advantage to innovate? So it's, anyway, I'm going on a tangent, but I get to teach at TMU and I also get to teach at George Brown in their brand design, Bachelor of Brand Design program. So yeah, it's been a fun ride. I'm still going. And I don't, I mean, I love what I do. I love what I do.
Man, that's cool. I mean, it shows that you're clearly very passionate about that. That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, the first aid thing is random, but I see what you mean in terms of like perfecting or coming close to that. Like you do this every year and you teach all these people, so you come to know all the little problems and then you correct it for next time, and like you just get really really that sounds like a great, like a just a fulfilling kind of experience of being like, I'm a master, like I know how to teach this, I've done it 100 times. That's cool. Also, yeah, I was a lifeguard and swim instructor too, but also like,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, which was fun. Like I actually really enjoyed it, and I think I relate to you in terms of the love of teaching, like whatever it may be, whether it's like CPR or graphic design or um swimming. Like I love teaching swimming lessons, and I was like kind of helped like coaching like this swim team at my high school a little bit, and I've always kind of thought that maybe I would like to like teach graphic design somewhere. So it's that's why I'm so curious to talk to you, because it's something that's been kind of on the back of my mind. I like doing like client work and kind of your typical graphic design jobs, but is that like, I don't know. I think teaching might be for me at some point down the line. We'll see.
Yeah, I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah.
I'm whatever it is. I'm 10, 11 years in at this point teaching full time in that university setting, and I am only more curious and more interested and have more ideas for ways that I want to update my practice and evolve what I'm doing than ever before. Like I feel that there has been the snowball effect where I kind of started off, and quite rightfully, like I followed those who taught me and who came before me, and I did kind of as they did. But the more I grew confident in myself and the more I grew confident in how others were doing it and maybe how others weren't doing it and trying new things, that's been the magic for me. And only 10 years into this do I really feel like I'm hitting my stride. And I
Wow.
have students who I've worked with in the past, who actually I'm thinking of one in particular who I now teach with as well. And he was like, "Yeah, we thought you were cool back then, but like what you're doing now, this is cool. I wish I was your student at this point
Oh,
in time,"
cool.
which is such an amazing compliment to get, because the, the more I understand my role as an instructor, the more I see myself as being a guide, someone who can kind of walk beside students and go like, no, I mess up too and I don't know all the answers and let's figure this out together, versus this top-down hierarchical, this is how you do it. Like that's not helpful for anybody.
Yeah.
And like our conversation that we had on my podcast, you can go and learn from the masters through LinkedIn Learning, Skillshare, Masterclass, Domestika, whatever it may be. You can learn from people who are the top of their craft. I'm not going to be able to teach you as well and as articulate as those people can, and as structured and as like beautifully laid out, but I can help you think about things in new ways, and I can help you understand more about yourself, and I can help kind of open up doors that you didn't know were there, and make connections. So the more I understand my role as an instructor, it's changing all the time, and it's changing in really cool ways where I'm coming down off the soapbox of how I thought it had to be done, telling you this is the way, and going, let's try something, let's figure it out, let's fail, let's grow.
Man, that's awesome. That's really cool. I bet you're a really good teacher.
I
That's
appreciate there's always room for growth, but I yeah, I feel good about where I'm at right now.
So like what are your thoughts, and we kind of touched on this in on your podcast, but like the role of a teacher and kind of the, because I mean I'm a big believer in like there's so much value in just an actual person who you can talk to and be like, what do you think of this, and just kind of get that direct feedback, as opposed to like online where it's a one-way conversation and it's not kind of that two-way thing. Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on that in terms of like, as you were saying, like your role as an instructor?
I see my role as an instructor really as kind of a connector. And that's a connector to the content, certainly. Like here are the resources that I think you should be looking at, and here's the stuff that you the foundational information that you need. So connecting to the content, but also connecting to others in the class as building that community in the class. And so let's create space and opportunity for those conversations to happen. And I almost liken them to kind of the old school water cooler conversations, right? Those things that we were missing during the pandemic, where it was really one way, and there wasn't a whole lot of these impromptu moments of like, oh, that's cool, let's try that, it's so I think those moments of helping to facilitate connection between students is really important in my role. And then also connection to the broader community outside of the classroom, including industry. So how can I, oh, one sec. My dog's about to shake. Oh, hi. Have a seat. There we go.
You knew it.
And I think also building connection to the larger community outside of the classroom, which includes industry. So, and through this podcast, like that's one of the big things that I've been able to establish is some really awesome, getting to chat with some really awesome people who I have no business chatting with, really. Like, as you said, can I have 40 minutes of your time, Ellen Lupton? Like, can we just do that for a minute? Or Charles Nix, like creative type director at Monotype, want to sit down for a few minutes? So I think that those connections outside of the classroom are also part of my role in as an instructor. And this podcast, while not directly being tied to my day job, like that's one of the big things that it's afforded me, is to provide me with this opportunity to make connections and then pass those along where they fit with students, which has been so cool, so cool.
So sort of switching gears, but another topic I wanted to ask you about, I know you're affiliated with or like a member of the Registered Graphic Designers of Canada, and I'm sure if someone's listening from another country, there's similar associations. Like, what's the deal with that? I don't really know anything about these associations. Like, what's your involvement? What do they do? Like,
so the Association of Registered Graphic Designers is this, I'll call it a hub. It's a hub for learning. It's a hub for certification of graphic design skills. It's a hub for connecting with other people. So it's really this incredible community who I became involved with 2 years ago, just about 2 years ago. And I became a certified RGD, and I then started volunteering with their education committee. And it's been the coolest thing. So again, like this podcast, it's opened doors to have conversations with people who are like-minded, but in our normal circles, we would never have met. And so that kind of interdisciplinary nature of the people that I've been able to meet through the RGD has been so cool. And Design Thinkers is their big conference that happens in Vancouver and Toronto every year. And this is the first year that it's back in person since the pandemic. And I remember, so I joined the RGD during the pandemic, but I remember going to Design Thinkers, whatever it was, in 2017, maybe 2018. So I've been a couple of times. But it's going to be so cool to go back now this year at the end of October, because I've met so many people virtually, but I have met very few people in real life. So it's just this place for connection, community, and being able to kind of give back to the craft of graphic design in Canada.
Yeah. And so you're speaking at Design Thinkers, right? Or you have like a panel or something, right?
I don't know. I have some things. Yeah. I'm doing actually, this is speaking of comfort zones or confidence. So I'm running actually an improv workshop, and improv is not my thing in the sense
like improv comedy?
Yes. But minus the comedy, just improv.
Okay.
So like improvisational theater, making things up on the spot. So in high school, I was a big drama geek, but improv scared the pants off of me, and it was not something I enjoyed. But now coming back to it as an adult and working through improv and being involved in workshops, like it is magic, and you can learn so much about yourself through improv. So the workshop that I'm doing is called Improv for Designers, and it's essentially working through a series of improv exercises to help build empathy, to assist with the client interaction. Like, how can we how can we better empathize or create those environments where we go, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that, or oh yeah, that's important, to then take those moments, those magic moments, and bring them into the client conversations.
Interesting. Wow, that's fascinating. Cool.
Who knows? It could be a big old flop, but I'm into that as well because that will give me a good story to bring back
Yeah.
to my students to say, hey, this didn't work, but that's
Yeah.
okay. Hopefully it does work, though. I think
Yeah.
it'll be fun.
Hopefully, that's cool. That actually reminds me, like you shared on your story, or something you've shared a little bit about, like failure, and maybe we could talk
Mm.
about this, like, and you just like listed off like this is a time I completely failed, and then this is another time that like this thing didn't work out, and like viewing those as like learning opportunities. That's I mean, it's just a good way to approach life, and like it does sound scary to do this like improv thing. Who knows how that's going to go? But if you have the mindset of like, well, I hope it goes well, but if it doesn't, there's still something to be learned from there. Um, that's cool. I don't know if I have a question there, but that's just cool.
I have so much to say about this. I'll keep it short, but I think what doesn't serve us as creative people is you are only as good as your last work. I don't think that serves us at all. I think that creative living is a marathon and not a sprint. And we have to zoom out. So, speaking again about telescopes, like we have to zoom out and see the big picture. And all of these opportunities to try new things and go into it with brave energy, knowing that it could be a total failure, but ultimately that's one tiny slice of our whole creative life. And who cares? Then pick yourself up. Let's try it again. I think there's so much education coming full circle. Education does students a disservice by using traditional grading systems, and I'm guilty of this as well because of economies of scale. It's and the fact that we have to produce a final letter grade. These are all parts of being in the university system. But I don't think we do our students a service, or we do them a disservice by evaluating them and giving them the impression, whether on purpose or by accident, that they are only as good as their last piece of work. I think there's so much opportunity in failing and like trying something and it not working out is oftentimes a way better learning experience than trying something, getting it perfectly, and moving on. I think that in the tinkering and in the trying to figure out what went wrong and in the humility that comes with like that little blow to your ego, that's a good thing too sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think that there's so much richness in this world of failure and in living creative lives that are not so focused on the perfect outcome, which is a whole perfection is not real. I mean, that's a whole other topic. But yeah, failure is important. Failure should be celebrated. There is an incredible creative author and designer and illustrator named Brad Montague, and he just shared on social media his failabration, and it was this whole celebration. He brought creative people together. They wore party hats. They were served like wonky looking cookies that were supposed to look like this, but actually didn't quite look like that. And they all got up on stage and talked about a time when they failed.
Oh, cool.
They wrote down their fears. They shredded these fears in a paper shredder. So it was just a fun, amazing event to normalize failure and even encourage failure in the creative process.
Beautiful. I couldn't agree more. I think we all gotta, because otherwise you're just not gonna, it prevents you from stepping out of your comfort zone. And I find myself where I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna do that because it probably won't go well. And then like a day later, I'm like, wait. What if I just did it? And if I failed, it's okay. And then you end up doing stuff that you never would have, and you never regret it. Even if it's a failure, there's something to be learned. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful message, and maybe a good place to end it.
Amazing. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Graphic Design is Fun podcast, but it's not over yet. Now, go listen to the other half of the conversation on Diana's podcast, Talk Paper Scissors. It will be linked below, or you can just search Talk Paper Scissors wherever you get your podcasts. Go do that now.